Subscribe to the Legacy of Survival channel right now, because what we're about to unpack is one of those quiet, overlooked truths of history that honestly changes how you see the modern world forever. If you care about real material culture, real survival knowledge, and real historical continuity, this matters a great deal. By the end of this video, you'll understand why wooden barracks from World War II are still standing in forests and shipyards today, while, modern decks, sheds and fences crumble into mulch before their first decade ends. This is the part historians rarely talk about, and it hooks you immediately. When researchers surveyed abandoned World War II-era airfields, docks and military camps in Europe and the Pacific, they kept finding something unsettling. The wood wasn't gone. In many cases, it wasn't even badly degraded. Pilings driven during the war were still structurally sound. Crates buried in soil were intact. Roof beams pulled from collapsed huts showed minimal rot. That shouldn't be possible if you believe modern building manuals. And yet it keeps happening. This isn't nostalgia or myth. It's chemistry, forestry, logistics, and wartime necessity colliding in a way we no longer replicate. The forests of the early 20th century produced fundamentally different timber. World War II construction wood overwhelmingly came from old-growth forests, not plantation stock. Trees were slower grown, denser and richer in natural resins, tannins and oils that fungi and insects really struggle to digest. A Douglas fir, harvested in 1915, grew for 150 to 300 years before the saw touched it. Compare that to today's 20 to 40-year rotation timber, grown fast, watered hard, and optimized for volume rather than cellular density. If you examine the growth rings under magnification, World War II lumber often shows tight, compact spacing that physically limits moisture movement, which is, honestly, the primary driver of rot. If you want to apply this today, the lesson is simple but, a bit uncomfortable. When possible, prioritize reclaimed lumber from pre-1960 structures, storm-felled old trees, or slow-grown species like larch, chestnut, or cypress. Density is durability. Speed is decay. Wartime wood was treated to survive neglect, not just to look good. Now, modern pressure-treated lumber, it's mostly designed for cost efficiency and to meet regulatory compliance, not for extreme longevity. Back in the Second World War, wood was often soaked or brushed with creosote, coal tar, copper naphthenate, or oil-based preservatives, which, penetrated deeply and stayed toxic to fungi for decades. These treatments were honestly brutal, messy, but highly effective. The United States Army Corps of Engineers specified preservatives assuming structures would be exposed, unmaintained, and, frankly, abused. The British Admiralty did much the same for docks, piers, and shipyard timber. Today, if you're building something meant to last, the practical lesson is to stop trusting surface-level protection. Deep penetration really matters. Oil-based preservatives, they still outperform water-based ones in harsh environments. End-grain sealing, repeated saturation, and allowing weeks for cure time will add decades to wood life if you do it right. WWII builders understood water as the real enemy. Rot doesn't start with fungi. It starts with trapped moisture. Wartime carpenters elevated structures, vented crawl spaces aggressively, and avoided direct soil contact whenever possible. Even temporary barracks were built on sleepers or pilings. When wood had to touch earth, it was either charred, tarred, or, well, considered sacrificial. You can use this immediately, you know. Keep wood dry first, protected second. Elevate posts on stone or concrete piers, that's important. Chamfer edges so watersheds instead of pooling. Never trap wood between impermeable layers, right? WWII builders didn't rely on sealants to save bad design. They designed so sealants weren't the only line of defence. The wood itself was cut and dried with patience. Modern industry no longer allows. Kiln drying today is fast and aggressive, honestly. During the war, air drying was common because time, not throughput, was available before mass deployment. Slow drying reduces internal stress cracks that allow moisture intrusion later. WWII lumber often went into service with stable moisture content matched to its environment. If you're serious, stack and sticker your lumber for months, not days. Let it acclimate, really. Rushing wood into service is a modern failure, not an inevitable one. Wartime logistics, they forced overbuilding rather than optimization. The structures built during the Second World War, well, they weren't value-engineered right to the edge of failure. Material redundancy was just common sense because, honestly, you couldn't count on getting replacements. So you ended up with thicker beams, oversized joints, and conservative spans being the norm. And when rot finally set in, decades later, there was still enough material left to carry the load. What you can take from this is to, reject minimum code thinking. Add thickness, add margin wherever you can. The wood that survives in the end is the wood that wasn't pushed to operate right at its breaking point. It's not just about material quality, you see. Maintenance culture itself has collapsed. Back in the days of the Second World War, soldiers and civilians, they routinely inspected, retreated and repaired wooden structures. Oil was reapplied, damaged boards were replaced early, before things got out of hand. Nowadays, folks expect wood to be install and forget, and honestly, that mindset is what guarantees decay. A simple annual inspection, re-oiling any exposed surfaces and sorting out drainage issues early on will honestly outperform any so-called modern miracle product. Here's the uncomfortable truth that really ties it all together. Wood didn't survive because folks back then were smarter. It survived because their systems valued longevity over speed, resilience over appearance, and, survival over profit. The war forced builders to think in terms of decades, not just quarterly cycles. If you take nothing else from all this, just take this. Choose slow-grown wood. Treat it deeply. Design for dryness. Accept maintenance as part of ownership. Overbuild just a bit. These aren't just old tricks, they're proven ones. If this sort of grounded material-level history matters to you, go ahead and subscribe to Legacy of Survival. Share this with someone who still thinks rot is inevitable, and help keep these lessons alive. History doesn't repeat itself, but the materials remember.